Dr. Fawcett, welcome to the show. Am I saying that correctly? Fawcett.
Yes, like water faucet. You got it. Thanks,
on.
Brett.
So we're about to turn it on. Welcome to the show. Hey, before we get started, how's it feel to be Cory today?
Today's a pretty cool day. I was sick a few days ago, and we were actually on vacation and got sick. It's like, ruined half of the vacation because you just spent the whole time in bed. But now I'm recovered and raring and ready to go, and I'm happy to start the new year. Have a new goal. I'm going to walk/run 2,025 miles during 2025.
Holy cow. So how does that break down to daily then?
You got average a little over 11,000 steps a day, every day,
okay.
all year, if you're consistent. But, I started out the year sick, so I'm behind already.
Yeah.
Got some catching up to do.
Catch up here in the beginning. So could you maybe just start by giving us a little bit about your mission to help healthcare professionals live healthy, happy, and debt-free lives, and what inspired you to take this journey? I mean, we've talked about so much already. What inspired you to take this journey?
Well, I used to. I started my life out in one path financially. Somebody gave me a book called Common Sense when I was a teenager, and it basically said, if you just follow these principles, you're going to be financially well off for the rest of your life. And so I just did. I thought everybody else did that too. And I became a new physician in town, and I'm a brand new, right out of residency physician. And we started this big project with a bunch of doctors in town, and they said, okay, you guys need to pony up. Everybody needs to pony up $5,000 so that we can get the seed money to get this underway. And I said, great, who do I make the check out to? And there were a bunch of doctors who had been, now I've only been in practice a year. There was a bunch of doctors who were nearing retirement who were given excuses as to why they didn't have $5,000 to put in there. And that totally, I didn't realize not everybody was doing it like I was doing. And people started looking at me like, how come that guy's got $5,000 and I don't? And people started coming to me and asking questions and asking for help. And over the years, we did a lot of discussions on finance, personal finance, what to do, how to handle the debt. And over the I'm busy, got some patients belly open, and we're talking finance. Because you can do the operation, on autopilot. You do so many of them. And so when people just kept coming to me, it just seemed like at the end of my career, maybe what I should do when I give up medicine is help the doctors with these things. The biggest thing I want people to remember is if you think it is a second job, you're doing it wrong. Okay? Real estate's supposed to be a passive investment. And this is what I tell doctors. Okay, you've got a doctor's office, right? Right, yeah. So when somebody comes walking in the door, do you open the door for them? No. Do you have them fill out the forms? No. Do you put them in a room? No. Do you take their blood pressure? No. Well, when you book them for surgery, do you make the phone calls? No. And then I kind of say, well, why are you there? You don't do nothing. Well, the thing is, there is only certain parts of your job as a physician that you need to do. The rest of it can be done by somebody else. And if you ran your doctor's office saying, I have to do everything, you could not make it work. You couldn't see enough patients if you had to do all the pieces. And yet, we buy a piece of real estate, and suddenly we forget everything we know about running an office, and we think we have to do everything. I have to answer every phone call. I have to go check everything. I have to do this. I have to do that. I got to mow the lawn. I got to rake the leaves. You don't got to do any of those things. So run your real estate ownership the same way you run your office. You have people to do that, and when you do that part and you only do the piece that is required by you to do, it takes very little time to manage 64 rental units. It only took me 15 hours a week, and that was a high number because there were some things that I enjoyed doing about the real estate that I kept on my plate, and I did them anyway. One of the biggest things that I like to teach people, and it's a final chapter in my book on debt, is finding the finish line. And most of us jump into like, okay, so they hear me say, oh yeah, I got to have passive income. So then they start these side gigs and they start doing things that eat up time. And they don't establish the finish point, the end point before they start. Okay. And what I see them do is they just get worse off than they were, because now they've got their full-time job and they piled on some side gig that's taken up full time. I remember looking at one person who talks to physicians about having, a better life later. They retired from medicine because of their side gig, but their side gig takes up so much of their time that they still need a nanny. They talk about, oh, I'll be more with my kids more. I'll get to be home more because as a doctor, I work too much. And yet they developed some passive income. But it turned out to be active income because they thought it was passive income, but it still takes their time. They just basically changed jobs. And if you don't pay attention to what you're doing, you could end up just changing jobs is what you're doing. And now you're just as busy as you were before, and you didn't actually achieve what your endpoint was. So before you go venturing off into something, figure out where you're going to go with it. I want to develop enough real estate income. Here was my target for retirement. I would have enough real estate income coming in to cover all my expenses, plus I'd have at least $1 million in my retirement account as a backup. That was my real estate goal. So when we started going, I was buying another one, and then I'd buy another one and buy another one. And I was looking at the next one, and I loved just chasing the deal down. The deals were cool for me. And so at one day I had this next one. I showed my wife, oh, I found this great apartment. Look at this one. And she says, so why are you looking at another apartment? And I hadn't even stopped to think about that. Why am I still looking? And she says, our goal was to have enough real estate so that it covers our expenses in retirement. We have that already. So why are you still out looking for another one? And I think that is a pitfall that we fall into. We get caught up in that process. And I was just out for another one and another one and another one. And I go to conferences and I hear people talk and they say, oh yeah, I've got 2,000 rental units. I'm thinking like, why? If it takes 2,000 of them for you to make a living, what are you doing wrong? Today I only have 55 units. And I only have that because my wife at that point said, stop buying more real estate. You don't need to spend your time doing that anymore. You've developed enough of it to cover you for the rest of your life, cover me and our kids for the rest of our life. Don't keep running when you've crossed the finish line. And you imagine going to a race and taking off and not knowing how far the race was, not knowing where the finish line is. Right. Nobody at a marathon crosses the finish line and keeps running. Owner financing is so much better than bank financing. So much easier, so much more flexible, way cheaper, get better deals. And so I really liked that. Okay, so that was one of my criteria. It has to be, it's not that the owner is saying owner financing available, but it has a possibility. And that means that the person who owns it must own such that less than 20% of the price is still mortgage.
Equity position. Yeah.
They have to have either no mortgage anymore. In fact, every property I purchased didn't have a mortgage on it when I bought it. Okay, so it's possible to get owner financing. And in several of them, the owner wasn't offering owner financing, and I talked them into it because it's better for them if they do owner financing. All but one of my deals, I talked the owner into financing, the deal themselves. And so, and one of the other criteria was that it can't be a fixer-upper. I don't have the time to be flipping, fixing. I didn't have time for that. It needs to be, I'm just taking over and it's going to keep going. I don't need to put a bunch into it. And it must work for a no money down deal. Meaning it has to cash flow positive at 100% financing. So that was my criteria to be sure that it had enough cash flow for what we were paying for.